Picture this: October 82nd BC. A Roman general stands at the gates of the Eternal City, commanding legions loyal only to him. Behind those walls cower senators who exiled him, populist leaders who seized his property, and thousands of citizens who supported his enemies. This isn't a foreign invader. This is Lucius Cornelius Sulla, aristocrat, war hero, and Rome's first dictator in over a century. But how does a republic founded on hatred of kings permit one man absolute power? How does a civilization built on law descend into proscription lists where citizens are murdered for their wealth? The answer lies in blood, ambition, and the Colline Gate. To understand Sulla's march on Rome, we must rewind to the crisis that shattered the Roman Republic. By 88 BC, Rome controlled the Mediterranean world, but internal tensions threatened to tear the Republic apart. For generations, two factions dominated Roman politics: the Optimates, aristocratic conservatives defending senatorial privilege, and the Populares, reformers who championed the common people and tribunes. This wasn't mere political theater. Land distribution, citizenship rights, and military commands worth fortunes hung in the balance. Lucius Cornelius Sulla embodied the Optimate tradition. Born into patrician nobility around 138 BC, he carved his reputation in Rome's wars against Jugurtha and the Germanic tribes. By 88 BC, he'd earned election as consul, Rome's highest office. But his rival, Gaius Marius, represented everything Sulla despised. Marius, a novus homo from an undistinguished family, had reformed Rome's legions and won unprecedented 7 consulships. Now in his 70s, Marius hungered for one final command: the war against King Mithridates VI of Pontus, who'd massacred approximately 80,000 Roman citizens across Asia Minor. The Senate assigned this lucrative eastern command to Consul Sulla. Marius, refusing retirement, manipulated the tribune Sulpicius Rufus to transfer the command through a popular assembly vote. Sulla faced a choice that would define Roman history: accept the humiliation or do the unthinkable. Sulla chose revolution in an act without precedent. He marched 6 legions, roughly 35,000 men, on Rome itself in 88 BC. Roman armies were forbidden from entering the sacred Pomerium, the city's religious boundary. Sulla shattered this taboo. His troops stormed through the streets, killing Sulpicius and driving Marius into exile. After murdering fellow citizens and intimidating the Senate, Sulla departed for his Eastern War, believing he'd secured his position. He was catastrophically wrong. The moment Sulla sailed for Greece, Marius's faction resurrected. In 87 BC, Consul Lucius Cornelius Sulla and the aged Marius seized Rome in a bloodbath that made Sulla's incursion look restrained. The Marian Cinna regime executed thousands of Sullan supporters, confiscated their estates, and declared Sulla a public enemy. Marius died in 86 BC, but Cinna ruled Rome as a military strongman until his death in 84 BC. Meanwhile, Sulla crushed Mithridates in a brutal eastern campaign. At Chaeronea in 86 BC, his 15,000 Romans annihilated 110,000 Pontic troops. At Orchomenus, he massacred another Mithridatic army. By 83 BC, Sulla had negotiated peace, plundered the east for treasure, and assembled 5 battle-hardened legions, approximately 40,000 veterans fanatically loyal to him personally, not to Rome. Now he prepared to return. Rome braced for civil war between the Marian faction controlling the government and Sulla's private army. The Republic's fate hung on which force would prove more ruthless, more disciplined, more willing to butcher fellow Romans for supremacy. Sulla landed at Brundisium in spring 83 BC with force that represented revolution in Roman warfare. These weren't conscripted citizens fulfilling duty. These were professional killers who'd spent 5 years sacking Greek cities, perfecting siege tactics, and bonding through shared atrocity. They'd seen their commander execute deserters, reward loyalty with plunder, and promise Italian land upon victory. More crucially, Sulla brought wealth beyond imagination. Gold seized from Athens, tribute extorted from Asian cities, enough treasure to finance years of war. The Marian government, now led by consuls Gaius Norbanus and Lucius Cornelius Scipio Asiaticus, scrambled to respond. They commanded approximately 100,000 troops across Italy, numerically superior but critically inferior in quality. Many were recent Italian allies granted citizenship after the Social War, men whose loyalty to Rome's government was suspect. Others were urban plebeians with minimal military training. The Marians possessed quantity, Sulla possessed killers. Geography favored the defender. The Marians controlled Rome's infrastructure, supply networks, and the authority to levy additional forces. Sulla faced the challenge every rebel confronts, winning quickly before resources exhausted or allies defected. Yet terrain also offered Sulla advantages. Southern Italy's mountainous spine created choke points where disciplined troops could devastate larger forces. The Po Valley's open ground suited Sulla's veteran maneuver warfare. Critically, Sulla understood this war's true nature. This wasn't conquest, this was extermination politics. He immediately published proscription lists, public death warrants for political enemies. Any Roman could murder those listed and claim a reward. Properties were confiscated, families destroyed. This terror served strategic purpose. Wealthy equestrians and uncertain senators faced a choice between passive neutrality, guaranteeing eventual proscription, or active support earning survival. The strategy worked. Marcus Licinius Crassus, future triumvir, raised legions in Spain for Sulla. Gnaeus Pompeius, later Pompey the Great, recruited 3 legions from his father's veterans in Picenum. These weren't reinforcements. These were private armies raised by ambitious men who recognized Sulla's victory as inevitable and positioned themselves accordingly. By summer 83 BC, Sulla commanded approximately 60,000 troops with more arriving weekly. The Marian leadership fractured. Consul Norbanus favored immediate confrontation, believing numerical advantage decisive. Scipio Asiaticus preferred negotiation, hoping to peel away Sulla's allies. This divided strategy proved fatal. Norbanus marched south to intercept Sulla while Scipio attempted diplomacy. At Mount Tifata near Capua, Norbanus positioned his army to block Sulla's northern advance. He commanded approximately 40,000 men, outnumbering Sulla's force. But numbers mean nothing without discipline. Norbanus's troops, citizen soldiers facing Eastern veterans, understood the quality gap. Desertion plagued the Marian camp. Meanwhile, Scipio's attempted negotiations collapsed into farce. Sulla met with Scipio, made promises he had no intention of keeping, then bribed Scipio's entire army to defect. Without bloodshed, an entire consular army switched sides. Scipio found himself abandoned by his own soldiers. The Republic was devouring itself. Roman fought Roman while Sulla's war chest purchased loyalty more effectively than political ideology. By autumn 83 BC, Sulla controlled southern Italy. The Marians prepared for desperate resistance. The real bloodletting was about to begin. The 82 BC campaign season opened with apocalyptic stakes. The Marians elected radical consuls, Gaius Marius the Younger, son of Sulla's old rival, and Gnaeus Papirius Carbo, a ruthless populist. They commanded approximately 150,000 troops scattered across Italy, the largest force the Republic had ever assembled for civil war. Sulla fielded roughly 70,000 veterans supplemented by aristocratic volunteers. The Republic was cannibalizing itself. The war fragmented into multiple theaters. Young Marius established himself in Etruria with 40,000 men. Carbo commanded forces in Cisalpine Gaul. Marian generals held Samnium, where Rome's ancient Italian enemies joined the anti-Sullan coalition. This wasn't merely Roman civil war, it was Italian peoples fighting their final desperate struggle against Roman supremacy. Sulla demonstrated the strategic brilliance that had conquered the East. He refused the Marian strategy of dispersed resistance. Instead, he maneuvered to isolate and destroy enemy armies sequentially. His first target, young Marius, at Sacriportus near Signia, Sulla's advance guard encountered Marius's army in April 82 BC. Marius, 26 years old and bearing his father's famous name, commanded troops who'd watched Sulla's veterans slaughter their comrades at Tifata. Morale was brittle. When Sulla's legions deployed in their characteristic triple-line formation and advanced in silence, Marian troops began breaking before contact. The battle became massacre. Sulla's veterans executed textbook Roman infantry tactics. Pilum volleys shattered the Marian front line, then gladius-armed legionaries pushed into the chaos. Marius's troops routed. Approximately 15,000 Marians died. Survivors fled to Praeneste, a fortress city 23 miles east of Rome, where Marius barricaded himself with 30,000 remaining soldiers. Sulla made a decision that revealed his genius for terror. Rather than besiege Praeneste personally, he assigned subordinates to starve Marius into submission. Sulla would march on Rome itself. The psychological impact was devastating. Rome, the eternal city, faced occupation by its own general. Marian defenders inside the capital numbered perhaps 20,000, but they confronted existential dread. Sulla commanded proscription lists that promised death for thousands. Senators who'd voted for his exile, equestrians who'd profited from confiscated Sullan properties, even ordinary citizens who'd cheered Marian victories, all faced extermination. But before Sulla could enter Rome, catastrophe threatened. Carbo's northern armies were marching south. Simultaneously, the Samnites, those fierce mountain warriors who'd nearly destroyed Rome a century earlier, assembled approximately 70,000 troops for a desperate offensive. If these forces united, they'd outnumber Sulla's besieging forces and trap him between Rome's walls in a two-front attack. The Samnite commander Pontius Telesinus understood this was his people's final chance. Rome had spent generations subjugating Samnium. Now allied with Marian Popularis, the Samnites marched for existential vengeance. Telesinus allegedly declared he'd demolish Rome stone by stone. On November 1st, 82 BC, the Samnites achieved what seemed impossible. Bypassing Sulla's scouts, Telesinus' 70,000-man army appeared outside Rome's Colline Gate at sunset. Inside the city, Marian partisans prepared to open gates and attack Sulla from behind. Sulla's army, scattered around Praeneste's siege and Rome's occupation, numbered perhaps 40,000 immediately available troops. The Battle of the Colline Gate would determine the Republic's fate. This wasn't maneuver warfare. This was butchery at close quarters outside Rome's sacred walls. Sulla deployed hastily in darkness. He commanded the right wing personally with approximately 20,000 men. Marcus Licinius Crassus held the left with similar numbers. The Samnites formed opposite. Telesinus commanded their right wing, his lieutenants the left. Both armies deployed in the classic triplex aces, 3 lines deep, designed for sustained pushing matches where rear ranks reinforced the front. When armies collided, Sulla's right wing disintegrated. The Samnites, fighting for their civilization's survival, attacked with ferocity that shattered even veteran resistance. Sulla's formations buckled, then broke. Thousands of Sullan troops routed back toward their camp. Sulla himself fought in the front line. Ancient sources claim he barely escaped capture. His standards were taken, his camp's gates were breached. The Samnites pushed forward, smelling total victory. But war is decided on multiple axes simultaneously. While Sulla's wing collapsed, Crassus's left wing was annihilating the Samnite left. Crassus, 34 years old and hungering for glory, drove his legions through Samnite formations in relentless assault. The Samnite left fractured. Crassus's cavalry swept around their flank. Night fell. The battle continued by moonlight, an almost unprecedented occurrence in ancient warfare. For hours, Romans and Samnites butchered each other in darkness. The fighting was so confused that neither side controlled the battlefield. Sulla's camp remained contested. The Colline Gate itself became a killing ground where bodies piled so high they impeded movement. Around midnight, Crassus's victorious left wing completed its flanking maneuver. His fresh troops struck the Samnite right wing from behind. Telesinus's men, who'd been minutes from total victory, suddenly faced encirclement. The Samnite line disintegrated. What followed wasn't battle. It was ethnic cleansing. Sulla's veterans, enraged by their near defeat, gave no quarter. Samnites attempting surrender were executed. Those fleeing were hunted through darkness. Telesinus himself died fighting. Ancient sources describe finding his body surrounded by Roman dead, his face locked in a final snarl. By dawn on November 2nd, approximately 50,000 corpses littered the ground outside the Colline Gate. The Samnite army had effectively ceased to exist. Survivors who reached Rome were trapped. Those who fled homeward found Sulla's vengeance following. 3 days later, Sulla addressed the Senate. While he spoke inside Rome's Temple of Bellona, screams echoed outside. Sulla had herded 6,000 Samnite prisoners into the Circus Flaminius and was executing them systematically. Senators listened to Sulla discuss policy over the sound of mass murder. When questioned about the noise, Sulla allegedly replied, "Just some criminals receiving punishment. Continue with business." Praeneste fell shortly after when young Marius, learning of the Colline Gate disaster, committed suicide. The garrison was massacred. Carbo fled Italy for Africa. Remaining Marian strongholds collapsed. By December 82nd BC, Sulla controlled Italy absolutely. The war had killed an estimated 300,000 Romans and Italians, approximately 7% of Italy's free population. Entire regions were depopulated, but the real terror was just beginning. In December 82 BC, Sulla forced a cowed Senate to appoint him Dictator legibus faciendis et Rei publicae constituendi, dictator for making laws and reconstituting the Republic. This wasn't the traditional 6-month emergency dictatorship. This was unlimited power with no defined end date. Rome hadn't seen such authority since the semi-mythical days of the early Republic. Sulla's proscriptions transformed political murder into administrative routine. He posted lists in the forum naming enemies whose killing was not merely legal but rewarded. Approximately 4,700 Romans were proscribed: senators, equestrians, wealthy citizens whose only crime was possessing estates Sulla's veterans coveted. Their properties were confiscated and sold at below-market prices to Sullan loyalists. Their descendants were barred from public office. Their heads were displayed on spikes in the forum, with rewards paid per skull. The proscriptions achieved multiple objectives simultaneously. They eliminated political opposition. They financed land distributions for 120,000 Sullan veterans settled throughout Italy. They terrorized potential resistance into paralyzed silence. And they fundamentally corrupted Roman political culture by demonstrating that force, not law, was ultimate authority. Yet Sulla's reforms revealed complex motivations beyond mere tyranny. He expanded the Senate from 300 to 600 members, diluting individual influence. He stripped tribunes of their veto power and right to propose legislation, neutering the popular's primary weapon. He reorganized law courts, created standing criminal courts, and reformed provincial administration. These weren't the actions of a simple butcher. Sulla genuinely believed he was restoring the Republic's aristocratic constitution against populist degradation. The historical significance is profound. Sulla demonstrated that Roman legions would follow charismatic commanders against the state itself. He proved that proscription lists and political murder could succeed without destroying the perpetrator. He showed ambitious men like Julius Caesar and Pompey that the Republic's constitutional barriers were penetrable by force. In 79 BC, Sulla did something extraordinary. He resigned his dictatorship, retired to private life, and died peacefully in 78 BC, allegedly from illness. He'd held absolute power and voluntarily surrendered it, believing his constitutional reforms would preserve the Republic he'd butchered thousands to save. He was catastrophically wrong. Within 40 years, Julius Caesar would cross the Rubicon, invoking Sulla's precedent. Octavian would use proscriptions to eliminate enemies en route to becoming Augustus. The Roman Republic would die, killed by the weapons Sulla forged. The Senate he claimed to restore would become a rubber stamp for emperors. Sulla had saved the Republic by destroying it. Our understanding of Sulla's civil war derives from multiple ancient sources, each with particular biases. Plutarch's Life of Sulla, written approximately 150 years after these events, provides the most comprehensive biography, though Plutarch's Greek perspective sometimes misunderstands Roman constitutional nuances. Appian's Civil Wars, composed in the 2nd century AD, offers detailed military narrative, particularly valuable for troop numbers and battle dispositions. Velleius Paterculus, writing during Augustus's reign, provides a Roman senatorial perspective that largely defends Sulla's actions as necessary responses to Marian tyranny. According to modern historian Arthur Keaveney's definitive work, Sulla, the Last Republican, the dictator's reforms represented genuine constitutional conservatism rather than proto-imperial ambition. Keaveney argues Sulla truly believed strengthening senatorial authority would prevent future civil wars, making his voluntary retirement logical rather than mysterious. Conversely, Christian Meyer's Caesar: A Biography contextualizes Sulla as creating the template for Roman military strongmen, with Caesar explicitly modeling his own dictatorship on Sullan precedent while learning from Sulla's failure to permanently eliminate opposition. The archaeological record supports ancient casualty figures. Mass graves discovered near Praeneste contain remains consistent with siege starvation and subsequent massacre. Excavations outside Rome's Colline Gate have uncovered weapon deposits and bone concentrations aligned with ancient battle descriptions. What makes Sulla's story enduringly relevant isn't merely the military drama, but the constitutional tragedy. A republic founded on fear of monarchical power permitted one man absolute authority because institutional mechanisms couldn't resolve factional conflict. When law becomes weapon rather than arbiter, force becomes the only political language spoken. If you found this exploration of Rome's first military dictatorship fascinating, consider the broader trajectory. How did Sulla's precedent enable Julius Caesar's dictatorship 50 years later? What connections exist between Sulla's proscriptions and Augustus's eventual transformation of Rome into empire? The Republic's death was neither sudden nor inevitable. It was a cascade of choices made by ambitious men who believed they were saving the system they were destroying. The lesson echoes across millennia. Republics die not with sudden coups, but with incremental surrenders of principle disguised as necessary emergency measures. Sulla believed his dictatorship temporary. He was right about his personal reign and catastrophically wrong about the precedent. Sometimes saving something requires destroying what made it worth saving in the first place.